I'm sure you've seen those CV templates floating around on LinkedIn, Reddit, and other platforms. Truth is, these templates might get you a job at your local mom and pop store.
Hello, and welcome to the Los Pollos Hermanos family.
But will likely not get you past the CV screening at major consulting firms, investment banks, and tech companies. In this video, we'll explain what's wrong with these CVs and how to turn them into a great CV, one that will get you an interview at the top firms. And if you want to know more, check out our CV masterclass on Udemy. More on that later. Let's go! Let's start with what a CV is and why a good CV is so important. The CV, which stands for Curriculum Vitae, also called your resume, is a summary of your professional life and accomplishments. Its purpose is to give the reader an idea about your education and your career up to this point. So basically your whole life, many years or even decades, compressed to a few lines of text. So why is a CV so important? Getting into consulting is very competitive, and so the top firms can afford to be pretty selective about who they hire. Everyone's talking about case interviews and how tough they are, but actually, 80% of candidates fail to even get to that point. Their written application is just not good enough. And by written application, we typically mean your CV, your grade reports, and your letter of motivation, or cover letter. Of those elements, the cover letter is pretty meaningless. McKinsey doesn't even ask for one. Anyone can write 2 or 3 nice paragraphs for a cover letter, but not everyone can have a great CV, because it takes years and quite some effort to build one. Your grades are important too, and if they are terrible, there's not much hope. But if they are at least decent, say somewhat above average but not stellar, a great CV can save you. So the CV is really the most important element of the application, and consulting firms won't even bother inviting you to an interview if your CV isn't impressive. You also have to think of your CV as your calling card. It's kind of like your very first and most important work sample. Great storytelling and packaging information in a visually appealing way is a critical skill for consultants. If you don't put any effort into this one document that is most personal to you, how much effort will you put into a presentation for a client CEO? The CV is more than just a document. It's a statement about you, your work ethic, and your prioritization skills. You've been spending literally thousands of hours on a degree, on internships, and on extracurriculars, but you can't spend 10 or 20 hours creating a killer CV? So yeah, a great CV is incredibly important since it's your golden ticket to the interview process. After clarifying why a CV is so important, let's start with a bad CV. One that you might find online as a template, even on professional platforms like LinkedIn. As you can see, this one looks quite cool and clean, at least at first glance. But it's actually a bad CV, and we'll tell you why. On a side note, whether you put a photo on your CV really depends on where you are in the world. In the US, you cannot do this. In large parts of Europe, it's actually quite common, so just stick to the rules of your region. At the MBB firms, it will not matter if you don't put a photo on your CV, so don't worry about that too much. Now, the first thing that's bad about this CV is that it doesn't have a standard format. You might be thinking, but hey, it's beautiful. However, you have to understand that recruiters have to screen dozens of CVs a day. They have very little time for each of them, and in that time they just want to quickly and efficiently check the key information that they're looking for. Unorthodox formats are just confusing and require extra mental effort by them to orient themselves. So make their lives easier by sticking to a standard format. This is not an area where you should get creative. You're not applying at a design agency. The second thing that's bad is that it actually contains very little information. Yeah, the page is filled, but what do we actually learn about the candidate? We know where she studied and where she interned, but almost nothing beyond that. She writes financial modeling or due diligence. Alright, those are terms, sure, but you need to tell us a little bit more about that. What did you actually do? Or what did you accomplish? None of that can be found. We've seen CVs in which someone writes due diligence, but when pressing the candidate, it turned out that they didn't even do any such work. It was just part of what the department did, but that's it. So you can't take credit for that. The third thing that's bad is that it contains a lot of fluff, which doesn't add value. For example, there's this summary on top. What's that supposed to accomplish? If there's anything relevant and concrete, write it down below where it belongs. Did you do something cool in your internship? Write it in the work experience section. If you want to highlight your academic achievements, put it in the education section. And if you just want to tell a story, put it in the cover letter and it gets the proper treatment. You have to understand, no one's interested in you describing yourself as a driven person or as a keen learner. Your education, internships and extracurriculars should show that anyways. And rest assured, all the other good candidates would fit that description as well, so no point in wasting space on your CV by adding that. Another bad habit in this category is describing your skills in a fancy way, like the candidate did here. What's that even supposed to mean? A 10-point scale? Who came up with that? What does 10 points mean? What does 5 points mean? Anyone can make up a scale, so that's just childish BS. I mean, what's next? You give yourself 2 out of 5 tacos for your Spanish skills? Or 4.5 out of 7 coconuts for your cocktail mixing skills? Please, stick to plain and understandable language, or use official certificates that you have, or broadly acknowledged frameworks. All of that is also not a perfect description of your skills, but at least it's not ridiculous. Alright, now that we've taken apart this seemingly good-looking CV, let's discuss how to do it better. Let's look at how to make a CV that's ready for the top consulting firms. So you can already see at first glance, this new CV looks much less flashy. In fact, some might even say boring. Others might say packed and overwhelming or hard to digest. But really, it's a pretty standard format that contains all the key information, and a recruiter will love you for it. Let's first take note of the overall structure. It's broken down into clear sections. Now, our bad CV from before didn't do a terrible job in this department, but here's the best practice. You split it up into 4 distinct sections. The introduction, the education, the work experience, and the additional information, which can be subdivided if you choose so. Let's go over them one by one to see what's in there. In the introduction, you write your name and contact details. You just need a phone number and an email address. Just make sure it's professional. Don't use the one you created when you were 16, you dirty devil. If you have an up-to-date and professional LinkedIn profile, feel free to add that as well. We'll explain how to best leverage LinkedIn in another video. Then you can also include a professional photo here, but only if that's required or common in your region. Avoid it if that's not common where you are. In the US, for example, you might be rejected automatically for including a photo. In the education section, you list your education, starting with the most recent degree or the one you're working on right now. If possible, you should also include your GPA or class rank, especially if it's good. If you're in the middle of completing your degree and don't have a final GPA, just include your expected GPA so that HR knows where you stand. Simply include whatever makes you look the best. If your GPA wasn't that impressive, maybe you can include the grade you got on your final thesis if that's better. Include any clubs or societies you were part of, especially if you had a leading role. And include things you organized, like a conference. Don't list your entire educational history, starting at kindergarten. Typically, you'd only include university degrees, or summer universities or exchange programs. Next, we got the work experience section. If you're a student and looking for an entry-level job, this is the proper order. If you're an experienced hire with a lot of work experience, flip this section with the education section. In the work experience section, you describe your most important career steps, again, in reverse chronological order, newest first. And of course, include what you did at these jobs, but not just listing activities or things that you can read in the job description. Make it specific and impact-focused. We'll give some more details on this in the next chapter. Finally, we have the section that's called Additional Information, or Miscellaneous, or Extracurricular Activities. Whatever works best for you, and you can also subdivide it into 2. Basically, that's just a space in which you put all the information that fits in none of the other sections. This could be specific skills you have, such as a foreign language, but it could also include hobbies or interesting things you did. Try and make it specific. For example, you could say that you're a drummer in a rock cover band, instead of just saying, I like to make music. And also, link it to the job if possible. For example, if you're a Boy Scout leader, it shows some leadership skills and that you're a patient team player. Have you been successful in sports? Put it there. It shows commitment and dedication, and depending on the sport, it shows that you're a team player. Did you do any volunteering? This is where you put it. And that's the basic structure. Our CV masterclass comes with a template so that you can easily put together an excellent CV yourself. Okay, now that we have a good sense for what goes where and the structure, let's look at how to write a CV. Here we want to explain what mindset you should take, and we'll focus on the work experience section in particular. This is the one that's most difficult to create and where these principles most apply. So let us show you how to make your work experience section stand out. As we said before, it's not just listing activities from a job description. Make it impact focused, so explaining clearly what was the result of your activity, ideally with a measurable outcome. And phrase it in an active way. For example, instead of saying customer relationship management, say increased sales by 10% by implementing a new CRM tool. So here it's really about selling yourself. Don't list the boring stuff you also did. Only list the coolest things. If one of your tasks in a 6-month internship was to compile a daily sales report, that doesn't mean you need to mention it. Even if you did it daily and that's what you spent the most time on, it's kinda boring. In consulting, no one's gonna be impressed by you doing repetitive work that an intern can do day in, day out. They wanna see that you can have an impact and that you can change things for the better. So maybe there was something about that internship and this particular task that we can turn into something more interesting. For example, maybe you upgraded and redesigned the report. That's already much better. Even if it was just a 2-day effort, it's just much more interesting, especially if you can point to any measurable or tangible result. Maybe you automated something and reduced the time spent to create the report by 80%. Or you added a cool analysis that uncovered new revenue potential. Or you proposed and executed a transition from a slow Excel-based report to a web-based tool. These are just some of the changes we recommend for ambitious job seekers. But there is so much more to say. That's why we created a full 3-hour course dedicated to CVs. With this masterclass, we dive into all the details and nuances of the process and take you step by step to a world-class CV. If you're interested, check it out via the link in the description. Alright, now one last question. How long can my CV be? How many pages should it have? Here the answer is pretty clear.
There can be only one.
Moving on. But all kidding aside, it should really be just 1 page. You can have a second page once you win a Nobel Prize, but not before. In academia, it might be different, but in consulting and in investment banking, you need to be concise. Trim it to the most important. Better to have 3 strong experiences than 5, where 3 are strong and 2 are okay-ish. If you keep it crisp, people will extrapolate and think, wow, everything this guy did was amazing. I bet there's more where that came from. But if you also mix in your less exciting experiences, people might get the impression that this is all you got. Well, that part is alright, but here he's already reaching. Keep it crisp. It's a major misconception that your CV should be an exhaustive list of your experiences, career and educational steps. Completeness is not the goal here. The goal is to wow the recruiters. So if you've done 5 internships anyways, there's really no problem if you skip the boring stuff and only list the 3 coolest ones. Don't dilute your cool experiences with boring ones. That will allow you to dedicate much more space to your best experiences. And that's the mindset to take here. And sure, we get it. We've heard it 1,000 times already from candidates that they think they can't fit it onto 1 page. But trust us, you can. Trim it down to the most important stuff, and if it still doesn't work, play around with the font sizes and the margins. So there you have it. This was our complete guide on consulting CVs. By now you should know why it's so important and what differentiates a good from a bad one. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe and activate the bell for more content like this. Let us know in the comments below if you have any questions or if there's a topic you'd like us to cover next. Thanks for watching and we'll catch you in the next one.